All right, welcome to day 3 of QuickPass, everybody. Today we have Guillermo Aguiar from Platoon. He's going to be the guy you're talking to whenever you do your assessment, and he's here to kind of go over the details of that and to answer any questions. Just like we had some questions on day 1, this is your time to really pick his brain on the process. And so without further ado, Guillermo.
How's it going, guys? Thank you, Aaron, for having me. So I just wanted to stop by and just go over the application process for Platoon. I'm the one that actually evaluates them. That's why I decided, actually, it was Aaron's idea to just come talk to you guys and just kind of go over some really important deadlines and some things to keep in mind as you progress through QuickPass and our application process. So just some dates that you need to be mindful of. Application deadline for QuickPass is midnight Central Time, September 6th. And then the deadline for your live technical assessment, that's after you submit your application and you receive your acceptance email from me, is September 8th, midnight. And the reason why that is because we have our Foundations of Programming that starts really the day after, September 9th. Aaron's recording this, so you don't have to hurry up and jot anything down. You just watch the recording. All right, so those are 3 really important dates you have to keep in mind. Most common mistakes in the application process, I want to go over them right now. The most common mistakes is actually not applying on time. That happens more frequently than you would think. So that's a really common mistake. And the reason I'm bringing them up is so you avoid them. The second most common mistake is the YouTube video that you create for us, it's private and I can't actually watch it. So make sure that you can unlist your YouTube video, or you can even use Google Drive link, but make sure that I have access to it. The email guillermo@codeplatoon.org, right, has access to it. If only one other person has access to your video, that's perfectly fine, but that person needs to be me because I have to watch it. Okay. Another common mistake. Those are probably the most common application mistakes: not applying on time, and then your YouTube video, or having an incomplete application. That happens pretty frequently. Let's say you apply on September 2nd or September 3rd. That gives you actually a little bit of time. If there's something missing in your application, you'll get an email from me saying, hey, you're missing this, or unblock your YouTube link, or hey, you're missing your video, or you didn't cover this in your video. Hurry up and redo it, and then I can reevaluate your application. So applying early here is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have to give you. Apply early just in case there's something wrong with your application or something's incomplete. You'll get an email from me saying, hey, fix this so we can admit you to our program. So definitely keep that in mind as well. The live technical, I always get a bunch of questions about it. The live technical is just 3 really short coding challenges, kind of on the easier level of the stuff you're getting in QuickPass. And we assess the following things: loops, variable assignment and reassignment, string and array manipulation, and then key value pairs and dictionaries. Why do we evaluate those programming fundamentals? Because everything in programming, almost regardless of language, can be done with those 4 things. So that's what we assess. Sometimes a student crushes two of the 3 in like the 15 minutes. They never get to the 3rd challenge. That's perfectly fine. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it takes the full 15 minutes for a student to get through the 3 challenges. That's also fine. So what we're assessing in the assessment is not what you know. Now, this is a really, really important piece here. We're not assessing what you know, the extent of what you know in programming. We're assessing if you have the minimum understanding of programming fundamentals to come to our program, right? Because we have great curriculum, we have great instructors, right? If you know even just a little bit, the basics, we feel that our instructors and our curriculum is strong enough to get you to where you need to be. Yes? So remember, we're not testing what you know, we're just testing if you have the minimum understanding. All right, so keep that in mind. I think that's the end of my notes. I think I covered all the most important things: important dates, common mistakes in the application, the live technical assessment. What other questions do you have for me? I'll go ahead and open it up now for any questions you might have about the process, about the technical assessment, about the cohort, about anything really.
When you're referring to the application, you're talking about at the end of this QP course for submittance, like the challenge and then the live challenge?
Yeah, the part 2 of the application, right? With the video and the questions you have to answer. Yep.
must not have gotten that far. I didn't know we had to do a YouTube video. so
yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's 5-6 minute video, just answering some pretty basic questions and then going over a coding challenge.
And where do we find that part 2 at? Because I applied for QuickPass, and my understanding with the instructions of applying to it was that at the end of QuickPass, if you pass everything successful, you're guaranteed to go into the cohort for the next one starting up. But I never got an email or anything, mentioning anything about part 2 or QuickPass.
Aaron, do you have a link to that, or we can get them the link?
The link to the part 2, I don't have it. So
okay, yeah.
Normally it comes with the application when you apply, correct? You finish part 1.
I'll go ahead and link it in the QuickPass channel shortly after this. Let me just get a hold of it. That work?
I saw something come through at some point from someone. That's very vague.
Yeah, no worries. I'll post it in the QuickPass channel. You guys are probably a little early right now, but I'll make sure it'll get posted in the next day or two. Way ahead of the time than when you need it.
And when does it start to start now either?
Go ahead and say that, Aaron, because that was actually kind of important.
Oh, it doesn't hurt to start now, though, does it?
Yeah, you can.
And
so this course ends in 2 weeks, yeah? Thursday the 5th?
Yes.
And the second part of this, the 3 challenges and the YouTube video are due, well, the 3 challenges are due by the 6th, Friday the 6th.
Yes.
And the YouTube video by Sunday the 8th.
No, the part 2 includes the video. That's September 6th. So the questions and the YouTube video and the coding challenges, that's all part 2. That's due September 6th. Then you really have 2 days to do your live technical. You're probably going to have to eat up your weekend if you don't apply early, which is totally fine. Like the slots open for that Saturday and Sunday. I pretty much clear my schedule. So anytime during that weekend will work.
And this is completely in addition to the actual application we've already submitted.
Step 1 really wasn't, it's like an interest form. It's not really an application. It's like really short, right? I actually haven't looked at it in a while. I don't know if they've changed it.
It's short.
Delvina, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do have my hand up. Ooh, okay, hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. I just came in. I just wanted to see what I was missing in regards to the application process, like what's going to happen with that.
We went over some important application deadlines. Your application in part 2 that I'll post in the pre-work channel probably in the next day or two. I just got to grab the link. I'm not quite sure where it is. It's due September 6th at midnight. It's really important that you submit on time and then you have your live technical assessment complete by September 8th.
Okay, so the challenge is the second part of the application is due Friday, September 6th. Okay,
yes.
Before midnight.
Yep.
And then the technical, that's like a one-on-one with you and.
Correct.
Okay, and that has to be done by the 8th.
Correct.
Okay, so the challenge is, I guess, the part that has to be submitted by September 6th midnight. Is that already posted?
I'll go ahead and post a part 2, probably later today or tomorrow. I just need to grab the link. I'm not quite sure where it is actually.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was on my only question.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I'm starting in Yankee Platoon in October. But I'm doing the pre-work right now. Like, I don't remember in the pre-work form, was there requirements for like checking in on the check-in days? Like, I don't remember if there's like requirements for that. I think you guys check in on Saturdays, don't you?
Yes, but none of that is actually required, just highly recommended. And we post all the links on the pre-work channel.
Yeah, because I've just been working through that and then this stuff too. So I didn't know if there was like any due dates or anything, but yeah.
Nope. Just the live technical assessment has a hard date simply because FOP starts and then.
Yeah, and I think I got that scheduled on the 4th. So
yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, I think James just put the link to the application part 2 in the Zoom chat. Yep, that's the link that works. Go ahead, Daryl.
When and how do we sign up for the live session with you?
Great question. That's something I actually missed in my notes. Okay, so when you apply and you're admitted, you are going to be added to a Slack channel called Pre-Work. In the Pre-Work channel, just like you have all your links bookmarked in QuickPass, the Calendly link to schedule your interview is bookmarked as well. And it'll say it in the email that you get from me saying, hey, join Slack ASAP, but you're already part of our Slack channel. Just you will be added to a Slack channel and then you can just book it there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The format for video, I'm reading through this as you guys were speaking. Just says tell us about yourself, short ass video to assess your fit for the program. Is there somewhere else or something that tells us kind of how to break that down? Or is it just open? Like we can just do it however we want?
Answer all the questions in order. I have found that that's the best. Like say, hey, question 1 of the application, question 2, question 3, now my challenge. Here we go. Just like that. Don't overthink it.
Where am I missing something here? Okay. Disregard. I didn't scroll down far enough.
Any other questions, guys, about the application? So when you apply, just know you're going to get a very quick turnaround. We're on a very condensed time frame for QuickPass. So the minute that you apply, expect in a couple hours, you're going to get a return email very, very quickly. So this is going to happen very quickly once you submit, okay? So you're not going to be waiting around very long at all.
So I remember seeing something from Jim about the part 2 challenges. The format has changed a bit, correct? Or is it still the same?
Yeah, it's changed to just 3 challenges and they have to just pick one of the 3 to include in their video. Pretty straightforward, a little bit more streamlined.
So we don't do 3. We don't have to do 3. We can do 1. This is in the YouTube video.
Yes. Well, the YouTube video only asks you to pick 1.
Gotcha. And that's in lieu of the 3 that it was before. And then
no, it was always 1. You just had more variety before. Now you just have a limited scope. But you always just picked 1. It's always been just pick 1 to describe. We just kind of want to see you like talk about your thought process solving one of the coding challenges.
What was I reading before that said you had to pass a certain percentage of challenges?
Our application process has changed over time. That might have been some of the older stuff on there.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's introduce yourself, pass a challenge on the video, submit it to you guys, talk to you for up to 50 minutes. Is that what you said yesterday, Aaron? 45 minutes?
I can't remember how long I didn't remember how long your one-on-one session is.
Yeah, they're slotted for an hour, but typically they never really go longer than 45 or 50 minutes.
Okay. We do have a question about the pre-work starting on the 8th. So if
starts on the 9th.
The
but
9th.
that's a foundations of programming class that's taught by one of our alums, Roger. And it just covers kind of a plethora of this stuff that you're going to see in the immersive, like regex, APIs, HTML, CSS. It just kind of gives you like a soft introduction to some of the stuff that you're going to see again in the program. We just kind of front loaded with some pre-learning to kind of build your confidence and kind of get you exposed to some of the things you're going to see. It's a really good preparatory class for the immersive. Again, completely optional. If you can attend live, awesome. If you can't, we post all the videos in the pre-work channel you're going to be added to, so you can do it asynchronously. It's pretty much just an instructor-led prep course for the immersive that I highly recommend if you have time to definitely take part in, because it's the reviews have been really great, and you learn a lot.
When you say immersive, you're talking about the full course, Like,
Yes, but if you're going into the part-time program, the same thing applies.
okay, so it's based with pre-course work. How long is that course, or
It's 4 weeks, about 20 hours a week.
for the preparatory course?
Yep.
Okay, so we finish this on the 6th, 5th. We do that for 4 weeks and essentially start right into the full course.
Pretty much, yeah. FOP ends that Friday, and you start the immersive October 7th, that Monday. Actually, we used to not have these technical check-ins and QuickPass and FOP. These are all new courses. This is all new scaffolding that we built into the program just because Rod thought it was a good idea, and it is. It's a fantastic idea. Because as you guys know, when you try to learn coding, you don't know what you don't know, and when you don't have a guide, especially like live, right, it's really hard to kind of make any kind of headway or feel like any progress is being made. So this is, again, all new courses that we've implemented in our program that we used to not have. So this is really great that you guys are taking advantage of this.
I can fully testify to that. I was completely lost after the first 6 modules. I told Aaron that yesterday. I was like, what am I looking at right now? I watched all these videos and spent 20 hours in one weekend going through all of it, and then started on a challenge. I'm like, okay, Greg, help. So no,
Yeah.
this QP is
Exactly. Jason, you just asked a question. Just give your best shot to the 3 new challenges, right? If you can't complete them all, as long as you can get your challenge for the application, that'll be good enough. Hope that answered your question.
Well, kind of. You kept making comment to the 3 challenges, and I'm maybe like Michael, I missed something as well. Whenever I started out the application, it had the 12 challenges. I think it took us to Coder Byte, where we did our challenges, and then you would submit it and it would see if it was right or not. I never seen anything about just 3 challenges. That's why I was asking whether we still need to do the 12 original challenge.
You don't need to do the 12 anymore. I'll make sure that you get the new, right? And
Okay.
just attempt the 3 new ones. They're a little bit more manageable.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
Yeah, send that link to me too. No, you said you're going to put it in Slack, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Delvina, do you have another question?
Yes. Quick question. The classes start September 9th. Is that mandatory?
Nope.
Okay.
So Foundations of Programming that starts September 9th is not mandatory at all, because we know people's schedules are very different. It's just a class that is optional, and it's highly encouraged to do it live or asynchronously.
Okay. And what are the times for that class? Times and days?
About 5:30 p.m. Central to about 9.
Okay.
The 4 weeks leading up to the start of October 7th. So it's every day for 4 full weeks.
Every day. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And if I have any other questions, can I reach out to you on Slack?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just going to say that, actually. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions after I duck out of here, feel free to Slack me. I'm always kind of on Slack. So my girlfriend hates it, but I'm here to help.
So the preparatory course, I'm assuming you can just kind of jump in and out, like audit a session, and then, time permitting, working with your schedule. Like maybe I can't be there on Mondays, but I can show up Tuesday and learn that, and then watch the video back for Monday. Is it kind of like that, kind of like this, where you can just kind of...
You can work through it asynchronously, but the timeline is so compressed. You really need to carve out as much time every single day to focus on this. I'll give you one of the best pieces of advice that I received when I started coding. You code every single day. There is no days off. Coding is so big and your ramp up is so tight, right, that if you miss a day, you're going to forget a little bit of what you learned. So that's the biggest piece of one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got when I started coding, and it served me incredibly well. It reminded me when I was in basic training, you carried your rifle with you and you never went anywhere without your rifle. When you're learning programming, you carry your laptop. You go everywhere with your laptop. I don't want to see anyone here without your laptop at all times. That's really how you make progress.
You going to make us drop and do 20?
No, I'm going to make you do 20 Code Wars.
Nice.
Does that pre-course also apply to if you're doing the DevOps program?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, one off the back of what I just said. So asynchronously or attend live every night. Regardless, obviously highly recommended. How far behind are you going to be if you don't? If you can't attend every single night of that, or for whatever reason? Like, is it going to strangle you out if you can't, when you start the full course, if you didn't do that or do a lot of it? Are you going to be way behind the pack?
So that's a really complicated question to answer. Are students, so I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. Are students better off that attend the course than those that do not? Yes, absolutely. 100%, no question about it. Now, how behind is a question I can't really answer, right? Because everyone's life is a little different, right? Some people going into the program can allocate, 2 hours a day, an hour a day, right? But once the program starts, they can allocate 70 hours a week, right? That's very different than a person that could, allocate less time at the beginning and then a limited amount of time during the immersive, right? Like, obviously, if you feel like you're a little further behind, but you can invest more hours during the program, you're going to catch up. However, if you come in feeling a little behind and you are a little behind and can only invest a limited number of hours during the program, then you never catch up. Does that make sense? So it's very dependent on what your lifestyle is when you go into the program. The immersive is very intensive, and I would argue that the part-time program is harder for the simple fact that it goes longer, right? It goes 28 weeks, right? And you're juggling a lot of the times a full-time job, other responsibilities, right? And then coding. So to me, that program's a little bit harder just because it runs longer, but both of them are very intense. And allocating the time and really time boxing and really making it really the top priority in your schedule is going to be key to not only completing the program successfully, but also landing a job, which is ultimately the goal of this.
Yeah, I'm part-time. So, and full-time job and kid and all that stuff. So
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Delby, did you have another question?
Nope, I'm good. My apologies. I just forgot to lower my hand.
All right.
All right, guys. I got to run, but I am in the QuickPass channel. I am going to get that link to you. Make sure it's right. So stand by in the next day or so. I'll get that to you. If you have any questions, Guillermo Aguilar, just ding me on Slack and I'll get back to you pretty quickly. Does that sound good? Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Yep. Have a good one.
Take it easy, guys.
All right. So yeah, without further ado, again, you can send him messages on Slack direct, or you can ask him in the channel. He's also in the channel. So feel free to ask him any questions. And same with Greg and Tish as well. If you have any other questions concerning the VA process or those beneficial scholarships, feel free to ping them. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we can just dive right into lesson 3, which will be Python ordered data structures. So we're moving away from the native data types, and we're actually going to like how to collect data and keep it and put it into a way to organize it. So let me share my screen here. Right, hit share. There we go. Make these windows a little smaller so we can maximize screen. Is my screen big enough? I think I put it back to where it was yesterday. I hope everybody can see it. All right. So now again, we're moving away from the native data types, and we're moving into data structures. And so this lesson and the lesson on Monday, we're going to go over ways to hold data in Python, different data formats, and today it's order data structures. And the two ordered data structures we have are lists and tuples that we're going to learn in this lesson. And you're going to use them basically if you code every day, just like Guillermo recommended, you'll be using lists probably every day. They are a big part of programming. Tuples, not so much. I mean, we do use tuples. You'll see tuples all the time, but lists are generally used more often. But in this lesson, we're going to explore the capabilities and limitations of these order data structures. And then we're going to look at the concepts of mutability again. We kind of learned about mutability and immutability. We learned about an immutable collection, and that is a string. And we're going to take a look at the counterpart, which is the list, which is a mutable data structure. So order data structures are also called sequences, and I apologize for this graphic being small. I think when I revise this course, I don't think I can even make it any bigger. Let me see if I can. No, the graphic stays the same size. Luckily, I do have the graphic from lesson 1. There it is. It's the same exact graphic. So just replace the word string with list. But we have the collection, and instead of now single letters like you see in a string, a list can hold any data type. So a list can hold numbers, it can hold floats, integers, it can hold single letters if you want, it can hold entire words, so it can hold strings, it can hold other lists, it can hold unordered data types. So you have the ability to hold a lot of stuff in a ordered data structure, a list. And the indexing is the same. So the first item in the list, if you index it forward, the first item is index 0, and it goes on up. It goes on up incrementally until the end of the list. And then if you want to see the last item in the list, if you want to access it, you can use the negative indexing starting at -1 to see the last item, and then working backwards, -2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in this example. So yeah, that's kind of like a quick intro on sequences, and then a bit of the indexing. And we're going to start with lists. And this is going to be the lion's share of the lesson will be lists, because there's a lot about, and there's a lot that goes on with lists and what you can do with them. They have a lot of methods that you can use. So we're going to learn list methods just like we learned string methods, such as split, which actually turns a string, depending on your separator, into a list. We'll have different methods included Python in lists. So in Python, if you think about the syntax, they're wrapped in square brackets. So the actual data type itself is wrapped in a square bracket, not to be confused with the square bracket using when you're indexing. The list will be wrapped completely with square brackets, and we'll see that here in a minute. So to initialize or create empty list, Python does have a built-in method, list, like this, and you can initialize empty list. So if I take this cell and I run it, and let me go ahead and initiate my Python kernel, I can call my list method, and we know that learning functions yesterday. Functions have functions or methods have the name and then these open and close parentheses. There are no parameters in this, but you can add parameters. But when I instantiate my list and then I go ahead and call it or print it, I can also print it like this and run it. I get back an empty list, and this is what the empty list looks like. Another way to instantiate a list is to just put the open and closed brackets and define it. So in this case, I'm making another list called my other list, and I'm using the single equal sign. If you remember, the single equal sign is the assignment operator, and then I want to go ahead and assign it to an empty list. If I run that, I get the same exact result. So I can instantiate it this way with the list method, or I can just make an empty list, and then that is also an acceptable way. Going back up to this note, we got to be careful though And you'll see that when I write variable names, if you notice, I always put like my list. You'll see other people put like list one or something, right? So list is a Python built-in method name. So like the reserved words that you could see in the pre-course, you can go find that section where they list all the reserved words. They do have a special use case right out of the box, so you don't have to do anything to use the list method. You can just install Python and use it. However, it can be overwritten. So if you were to do list equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then try to instantiate a new list with the list method, you'll get an error because you just overwrote list, the method itself, with a list that you had defined. And if you do that, if you overwrite a Python included method, you'll have to restart the kernel to get it back. So that's just something, when you're coding, you'll think, oh, I can just use list, and you'll make it, and you won't even realize, and all of a sudden, like, you go back and look at the lesson, and you try and instantiate, you're like, why is it not working? It's giving me an error. That's because you overwrote it. You just need to restart your Python kernel. In Jupyter Notebooks, especially on VS Code, you'll have your restart kernel right here. So if I hit that and restart it, what that will do is just restart my Python kernel and clear everything else out. So I would have to rerun these cells. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my outputs and go back to it. But you can do that right there with the restart button. Okay, let me go ahead and run these. I don't think I need them, but I'll run them anyway. You can also include data inside of your brackets already. So if you kind of have a starting point in your code of stuff in your list, you can put the elements already inside. So in this case, I have my number list or num list, and I have the numbers 0 through 9 in there. And I instantiate it, and then I just call it immediately, and I have my list I just assigned to num list. And this is where we start to see the beauty of lists, because now I have numbers here. That's great. But now I have strings, individual strings in my string list. I run that, and now I have a string list of I love Python. So that's how you can instantiate a list, empty list, or with data already in it. But we're not done. We have more. Lists can also contain other collections, such as other lists. So lists stored inside of other lists are considered nested lists. And we have a whole lesson on nested data structures that we're going to talk about in lesson 6. So next Thursday, we will go over that. It will also be the last lesson of new material. And then we're going to have 3 more days, a whole other week, to practice using all these things we just learned. So I promise it will come together. I know I've received some messages from some of you kind of worried about progress. We've only gone through 2 days. We're in our 3rd, and I promise it will get easier as long as you practice every day. So just bear with me. And we have plenty of examples to go through, and then I hope that when we get through these mini projects, it'll all come together for you, and you'll feel a little more comfortable doing the application process, finishing those challenges. And I think you will. You'll be surprised how much you can learn real quickly. I couldn't believe it when I went through Platoon. It was 14 weeks. I knew nothing when I started. Platoon, I didn't have the ability to go through a QuickPass program. They had this. And he's talking about introducing these classes before Platoon. I had this. I was teaching myself Python before I applied, and then I applied, and I just happened to know enough. I went through lists and functions and stuff on my own, and then got through the application, did the video, and then I didn't have to do an interview, so they just took my challenges. So they didn't have interviews when I went through, and then yeah, and then it's I went through the course, and they had a pre-course, which it was like a few weeks, kind of like Foundation of Programming, but not as intense. It was just exercises on your own time. And then I was just expected to start. And then they really hit the ground running when I started. And so in 14 weeks, you learn, you're already supposed to know all the basics here, and then you start putting stuff together, and you're starting doing like web, you're hitting APIs, and you're making calls to those, and structuring data, and making full-on web apps. It's a very fast process, so the course flies by. So if you get in and you're going through it, you'll be surprised how much progress you make. So I went a bit on a tangent there, but it's just bear with me. I know some of y'all have been a bit worried. But yes, getting back to lists, they can contain other collections such as lists. So in this case here, we have a list with A, B, C, and then if you notice, I have more brackets. And then what's nice about this IDE is it will color the different brackets, so it's kind of easy to see the separation. It's a bit harder when they're all the same color, but you can see that, okay, well, this outer list, how many items does it contain? Anyone want to take a stab?
I'll guess 4.
4 is correct. Yep, there are 4 items in this list. Just one of those items is another list with 3 items. So just keep that in mind, that when you're looking at nested data structures, you'll see them more when we get into the advanced data structures lesson. When you're doing like a length method on these lists, if I ran that, if I ran length, so you wrap it with the len method like that, and I run it, 4. There's 4 items in this list. Any questions on just the list introduction itself and how to use the syntax? Just remember that square bracket. If you haven't used that key very much in your normal everyday typing, you will. It's a very common key to press. Same with the curly brackets, which are the same keys, just with shift. All right, we got some good to goes in here. Sounds good. All right, well, let's go into list operations and methods. So there are plenty of methods we can use with lists. And we're going to go over a lot of them in this lesson. In this, I have a list that we're going to kind of change and mutate as we go through this lesson. And it's called the travel bucket list. And in this, we have a bucket list of places that I would love to travel to. Want to go, of course, hit Antarctica because it'd be kind of cool to go down there. So if I want to initialize it and run it, there I printed it, and now I have my list. It's saved in memory at some memory location in my computer. It's there, saved in the RAM, ready to go, that I can always access it. So just like accessing individual elements in a string, we can add the square brackets after the list name to access the individual elements in the list. That's the same as just like a string. If I wanted to access a single letter in a string or a character, I can use these square brackets, and I can go ahead and access it and see it. But with lists, you can use the assignment operator on that to override an element at location, and it will let you do that. With strings, you cannot, because strings are immutable. So in that case, I have my list variable, so my travel bucket list there. And let me copy and paste this over here, actually, so we can use it. And I will just keep adding code blocks here. That is not a code block. Let's change it to Python. There we go. I'll instantiate it there, add a new code block. So if I wanted to access Chile, how would I write that out? In my travel bucket list over here on the right side of my screen. What would I type?
What would it be?
Travel underscore bucket underscore list equals Oh, no. I'm sorry. Square brackets after list,
brackets and
and then 0, 1, 2, 3.
So 3.
So the number 3, yeah.
Okay. I run that. Boom, we got it. So there it is. So travel bucket list, Chile. Cool. What if I want to get Fiji and Ireland? What if I want to print both? How would I do that?
You just use a comma and put 4/5.
So use a comma.
Same format, but then 4, 4, 5.
So same, like just like this, and put 4, 5.
I'm guessing, but yeah.
Let's see. Nope.
Hmm.
Nope, that's a type error. It says list indices must be integer slices, not a tuple. Okay. We'll learn about tuples here in a bit.
You have to put 5 in its own square bracket.
So 4 and then like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Nope, string index out of range. No, that didn't work either.
Is it 3:5 in one more square bracket?
Like that?
Yeah.
That's Chile and Fiji, but what about Fiji and Ireland?
For colon 5.
So 4 and 5. Yeah, Fiji. So this is really cool. I like us going through this and seeing this because if you remember, when you take slices, that's what we're doing. We're trying to take a slice of this list, right? Just like we take a slice of a string, and we learned on day 1, it's up to but not including that. So if you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's up to but not including. So you would need to make it 4, 6, and that's how we would get it. If we just wanted to get a slice of that list and look at that, it's 4 because you start at that index. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the 4th index. And then if you want to just get one more, you need to go up to 6 because it does not include 6. Up to, but not including. So, and that's what I talk about here in this next table. You have your list variable, you want your start, your stop. You can also do the optional step if you want to. So that's the third one. That's where you can get like every other or however you want to do it. That's what you would do with the slicing with the square brackets there and the colon inside. So when you have that colon inside, that's the strings or the string or the list slicing. You're just slicing a collection. So hopefully that will kind of that jogs your memory a little bit about this string and how we did that. Here again, here's my examples of grabbing a single index. This one here actually reverses everything. So this is reversing, not slicing a string. But we showed that already. So here, if I want to reverse if you remember from the string methods, I had the -1 for the step. So you get the entire, with these two, you get the entire collection, and then you use the step of -1 to reverse it. And then you have a reversed list. So this is kind of a bit of a review, right? We already learned how to do these things on day 1. We covered all that. But this is the new bit here. Now we can introduce this part. We tried this with a string, if you remember on day 1, where I said, see, you can put the index just like you want to grab and just look at it, but you can try and assign it to something new. Okay. If I do that with a list, sure, it'll just take index 4 and just change it to Texas. So now, instead of Fiji, we have Texas. And I know some of you may agree that's probably better for the travel list. Some of you may not. But that's not my travel bucket list. So Texas is on my list to travel to. Any questions on accessing like a certain index in a list, or the slicing. I hope everyone enjoyed that little review on slicing again. Slicing can be a bit confusing when you kind of forget the rule that it's up to but not including, and then throwing this -1 there, reversing a list. I urge you to just play around with it. Use this example of this travel list and try and manipulate all sorts of different ways. And then you can use this also with loops and try and loop over the things, and all sorts of stuff. And so you'll learn all these list operations here, and it's really good to kind of play around with it. So one asked if we wanted to access the 0 and the 3 index. You want to do the 0. So if you want to do a slice, right? So of these, right? So if you want to get the first 3. So if you want, okay, so if you wanted to grab just this one and just like this one, then you would use well, you can use the step if you wanted to. You can use the step. So let's try that. Let's do 0, and then so it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So we want 4, and then we want to do every third. So there we go. So yeah, New Zealand and Chile. So I use the step now to step over 3. So that's a good usefulness of the step if you want to grab something, but you're typically not going to know the locations. You'll want to use some of the other methods that we have that I'll talk about down below. All right, let's move on to some of these list operations here. So just like we worked with in a string, and you've seen me use it earlier today, the length method. So we can wrap our travel bucket list with the length method, and you see we have 7 items in the list now. It's not counting the letters; it's counting the entire item. So that's 1 item, and then this is 2 items, and then 3 items, so on and so forth.
Can you run that last one on the right there, the travel bucket list 0:4? I'm curious what the. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then if we go back to the 3, then it's just going to grab New Zealand and Chile, because you're going to skip over the middle 2. So you can hit every third one. So all right, and if you remember from yesterday's lesson, we talked about those membership tests, right? So we have the in word here. So print Fiji in travel bucket list, then print Texas in travel bucket list. Well, we know we replace Fiji with Texas, so Fiji is now false. It is not in the list, but Texas is, so that's true. Any questions on the list operations or anything else we've introduced with lists so far? Okay. Scroll down here. All right. Okay, so here are the list methods we are going to talk about for the evening and before we get into tuples. And so what's nice is this, they're broken down a nice table for you, kind of tells you what's going on with it. So we have our list append, and we have list extend, and it says iterable. What does that mean? We're going to go over that. Then you have list insert. It has like 2 parameters, and list clear, list index. Okay, so we have a bunch of different methods, right? And we're going to use these on our travel bucket list. And try and use all of them. I may not have all of them, but so let's just start with the top, right? This is one you'll probably be most familiar with when you're working with code, and that is append. that means you're basically adding an item to the end of a list. If you remember from the name of the lesson, right, it's ordered data structures. So when you define a list, whatever way you define it, that's the order it maintains. So there are methods to change that, but you know, whenever you define it, and then the changes you make, the list will persist however you changed it, and it won't change order unless you want to change it. That's in contrast to Monday's lesson, which will be unordered data structures. So there's different ways to grab data out of those, but we're going to stick with ordered data structures in this lesson. So with append, it says add an item to the end of the list. So in this travel bucket list, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to go to Germany too. So if I want to add Germany to my travel bucket list, I'm going to write my list name, then dot append, and then I'm going to go ahead and put whatever I want to put in the list. It doesn't have to be a string, even though I think it makes sense that we want to keep it a string because we're just using location names. But you could really add any data type. You don't have to have a standard data type in a list. It can be all sorts of data. So in this case, we have append Germany, and then I'm going to call travel bucket list. And if you look now, now I have 8 items, and Germany is at the end now. So that's what append means. You're just appending one item, and it goes into the list as one item. And that is the big difference between append and then our next one, which is extend. So when we say list.extend, then we have this what's called iterable here. It's something that can be iterated over or something that can be looped over in Python. And so if you look, there's a big difference between this one and this one, right? So when we say extend, we're actually feeding it another list. And what extend does is it takes each item in the list and adds them individually to a travel bucket list. So, so we have all the same data structure. If you used append with this list, it'll attach the list just like you saw with nested list. It would just attach that list as one single entry. So your formatting may be a bit off when you're trying to run that. So if I took a look at my travel bucket list now, I have 11 items. So I've now added Argentina, Thailand, and Australia to my travel bucket list.
If you used append, it would show as 8 lines, the 7 that were already there, and then a line with 3.
Right. So let me do this real quick. Let me copy this. And I'm gonna give us like a good point. So travel bucket list equals that's not what I want. I thought I copied this output, and I guess I didn't. Let's try again. There we go. That'll work. All right, so now if I add a new code block, travel bucket list, and hit go. All right, I'm back to my 8 ones over here. So if I ran append with this, right? So if I take this now and move it over here and just change that to append. I'm gonna add a new code block. Travel bucket list. Run that, and then run this. Now, if you look, here's my items, and then this is the last item. It's a nested list. You know, that double closing square bracket. That's what happens when you append. So this is the iterable you want to pass in to extend if you want to keep the same formatting in your list.
So, Aaron, I have a quick question. So, when it becomes a nested list, then is that as if Argentina, Thailand, Australia are part of Germany now? Or how does that look?
Okay, so here, like, okay, so let's say you want to just extract, like, let's just try and extract Thailand now. So just like I had y'all do up here, say, hey, I want to see how do you just access Fiji or something, right? Well, then let's take a look at how we're going to just access one of those, right? So we know that it's at the -1 index. So if I did this, right, and I ran that, then I will return that entire list because that is at the -1 index of travel bucket list. But if I want to access just Thailand, well, how do I do that? Well, you're going to learn this in lesson 6. And well, even before that, when you start doing exercises, you'll get there anyway. You restart your numbering because you're now diving into another level, right? So Argentina becomes 0, Thailand becomes 1, and Australia becomes 2. So if I want to access Thailand, I would just do my numbering. I would access my indices like this. If I ran that, I get back Thailand because I first have to go into the -1. And let me go back to this so we can see it again. I first have to go into this index, and because this is another list, I have to then kind of structure my indexing again. I have to kind of drill it down. And if I had a third list inside of this list, I would just keep adding brackets. So it's just like you're going into different levels of a data structure. So -1, 1.
Would it be like saying like a different? No. Okay, I'm just trying to visualize it.
If you are feeling like you want to get a good visualization, I have some pretty good examples in that lesson. You can take a look. You don't have to, but really it's kind of like, this is kind of like a spreadsheet, when you're looking at nested data structures, you have columns and then rows. And
Okay,
so,
that's exactly what I was going to say. Thank goodness. Yep. Okay. All right. I see it.
Yep.
So if you had, let's say right now there's one country or state per line, right?
Uh-huh.
But if each one of those, let's say for simplicity, had 3, and you had 8 lines with 3 per, and you wanted to access the middle one for each line, you would just do the same exact thing if you wanted to access. Well, could you even do that? Like, let's say each one of those had Antarctica and 2 others, and Italy and 2 others, and so on, and you wanted to access the middle of each one of those. Not that you would, but just for visualization. How would you do that? Like, how complex would that be to access? Like, it's simple if you're just looking for, line 8, Thailand in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
But what if you were trying to access multiple?
So the lesson on Wednesday next week, looping is going to help you access data structures, and you'll see how we do that. So yeah, looping will help you kind of access data structures repeatedly, especially if you're looking at like lines that look the same. You'll use a loop to kind of access things and extract them as needed. So yeah, and we'll go into that on that lesson, and then we'll talk about nested loops and everything else. So so one asked list append X, there's a way. We're going to use the insert method. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So if you want to put something in a specific index, that's what you're going to do. So list inserts an item at a given position. So we're going to talk about that here in a second. But let's actually talk about that after the break, because it is 7 o'clock. And I know that I have something in the oven for my kiddos I have to pull out. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll come back at 7:10. You're welcome. The recording. All right, welcome back from the break, everybody. We are going to resume our list methods. Before the break, we went through and we talked about list append, list extend, and then we're going to move into list insert. But before that, I just wanted to kind of revisit, getting into GitHub code spaces, because being able to run code and follow along, that's really important. So in the Slack channel, of course, you have a link to this QuickPass. And if you've already made yourself a GitHub account, when you click on that link in Slack and you come up to this screen, you'll know you're logged in when your profile picture shows up in the right hand side. So you can get yourself logged in, and once you're there, you can click this hamburger menu up in the left here. And when you open that, you'll see this space right here for code spaces. And again, what these are, they are containers that you can run, and they have a free tier where you can just run them and it doesn't cost you anything. And you get up to 60 core hours a month to use for free. And I think these are 2 core machines. That brings you down to 30 actual hours if you're running just one machine, which is plenty of time for this class. And you can start by opening up a blank template. So if you use this template right here and open a blank one, what it does is it makes a new code space and it gives you Visual Studio Code already out of the box. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to install anything. You just get it out of the box. It's going to go through. You'll see some stuff like running and getting set up. And you can choose your theme if you want to, or just close this window if you want to get up and running. On the left-hand side, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. On the left-hand side, you have these little boxes here. It says extensions. If you click that, you can search extensions in the marketplace. If you type in Jupyter, you'll get a list of extensions named Jupyter. The top one has now 81.4 million downloads. Last time we went over this was 81.3. You can click install Jupyter right here into this code space. And so right now it's installing. It only takes a couple seconds to install. And it finished. And I can go back here and I can, you can start with a blank Jupyter notebook. You can hit new file and click it and just say my practice notebook. So notebook, and you do .ipynb. When you this that is a Jupyter notebook. And if you look, this is the Jupyter notebook. So when you activate one file, then you get this pop-up down here. It says, do you want to install the recommended Python extension? You want to click install. And so it'll install on there, and you can just close the window, and you'll see the progress where it shows it's installing. And when it's done, this will change and show that's installed. You can close the welcome window, and now you have Python ready to go. And you can type right along with my lessons here, or if you go back into the GitHub, let me find the GitHub page. So back here in the QuickPass page, you can download the entire repo right here with download zip. You download the zip file to a location on your computer. You can unzip it on your computer. And when you have it ready, like just unzip it to a location that you know on your file browser. You could actually open your file browser right next to your code spaces window, and you can drag and drop all the folders and everything right into here, and they'll load, and then you'll have all the lessons in a single GitHub code space. So that's all you have to do to get started, and then you'll be up and running right along with me. So it's really fast. It only takes a couple of minutes to get going. You don't have to install anything. You just open up GitHub code spaces and you're up and running, and you can be coding right along. So hopefully that clears it up. You'll have this on video to follow along. It's right after the first break, so you can kind of scroll that. And so when you're watching the video, if you have any questions after that, please let us know on Slack. Just throw a message out there in the main room, and we'll be happy to help out. Any questions on that?
I only have download raw file. I downloaded that and then I dragged it, and it kind of looks like it, but I don't have that.
So did you drill into like the lessons folder? Because you do have that. If you go here, then you can download the raw file. I believe you have to actually click the file. But if you go back to the main window, so wherever you get to when you click from the Slack channel.
Okay.
When you click this green code button, it has a download zip right there.
I see it now. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, let's carry on with these list methods because we have quite a few to still get through. So we talked about append and extend already, and now we want to look at maybe inserting one. So let's say we thought, oh, we actually have another location I want to travel to, and not only that, I want to travel to it first. And so in this case, we have travel bucket list, and we have dot insert. And then this method takes two parameters. So if you remember with functions that we learned yesterday, you have parameters you put into a function. In this case, we have the index and we have whatever we're putting in. And so when we run that, now Canada is at the 0 index. So it's not appending, you're actually inserting at a certain index, and it will just shift everything else down. So that's a way to get data into a list, but not at the end. If you put it at the beginning, for example. So this is a bit of review on append and extend. They look very similar, but they're very different here. So if I want to append another, so I want to append Peru and Dominican Republic. If I do that, then I just kind of messed up my travel bucket list, and I put a list as one item when it has two items in it. And then if I try to extend with one single item and I run that, then it's going to go through and add every single letter of that string as a separate item in my list. So append always adds the argument as a single item. Even if your argument's a list of things, extend will always treat the argument as a sequence of things. And if you try and extend it with a non-iterable, it'll give you an error. So, but it'll just break it up and put it as a sequence of things. In this case, a string is an iterable, so you can loop over a string and see every letter. It'll add every single letter in there just like that. The dot remove method searches a list for a value specified and removes the first instance of that value from the collection. And then you have the pop method, which will remove an item at the index I, whatever you give it, and will return that item for you. So in this case, let's use the remove method to remove the letters we had in Japan. So in this case, if we're not remembering that it only removes one item, well, if we ran this here and then we took a look at our travel bucket list, we got rid of J, A, P, and N, but then we have to realize there's another A in there because Japan has two A's. It only removes one. It doesn't remove them all. So you can't use that as a catch-all. It's just gonna, if it finds just one of them, it's going to remove only the first instance of it. So if I were to run this and run it again, then I got rid of Japan. I cleaned that up. And then this is supposed to be travel bucket list. Fix that in my bucket list. My wife had one as well. Travel bucket list. Oh no, this one was, that's right. No, this was right. It was correct. I remember what I was doing here. So this was and that's misspelled. P-O-U-S-E. So the pop method will remove and return an item at an index you select. So this was my wife's bucket list, and it got accidentally put into mine. So I can fix that by creating, my spouse's bucket list or bucket item, and then popping it out to hers. And so now it's hers. And if I take a look at mine, it's been removed, popped out of my list, and it's put into hers. So I've saved it into another location in memory that I can access later. So that was a lot going really quickly, but if you remember, the remove you give it you give it an item. So whatever item you have in your list, if you know what's in your list, you can remove it with the remove method, and it removes the first appearance of that item in the list. The pop method will take out and return an item at whatever index you specify, and it'll take it out of your main list, and you get the opportunity to define it as something else. So I defined it as, spouse bucket item or spouse bucket list, and I said, okay, it's equal to whatever I pop out, which is the last list here, and now it's saved as that. Any questions on some of these methods here? We'll go back up to the main list because we kind of added a couple, and then we'll go back to these here. Good to go. Sweet. There's a whole bunch. Right now we've looked at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have a total of 11 different methods that we have here. And there are actually more. These are the ones that are kind of used more commonly. There are a lot more in the, if you can Google Python list methods. That's one thing that, you'll improve if you get into Code Platoon, you're actually going through class, your Google foo will become really awesome. But you can just Python list methods, and you have all sorts of places to go. W3 schools is a pretty common one. I'm sorry, it's really small. Let me make it bigger. I just realized it's really small. W3 schools is a really good one that, it's a pretty common one people go to. When you Google, it's the first one. It's kind of the most popular. You have your official Python documentation right here. It talks about data structures. I would probably go to these sites, and you have a whole bunch to choose from, really. W3 schools is kind of the most common, or Geeks for Geeks is another one. This one always gives you like a pop-up to log in. I don't know why, but if you go to W3 schools, you have them right here. So you have clear, copy, count, extend, index, insert. So, and you can get all your methods right here. So you have dictionary methods, tuple methods, set methods. So we're going to learn about sets and dictionaries on Monday. String methods, what we learned on Monday. The built-in functions. So, this is a really good site to just kind of get a quick look at of what does this do. If you click on append, it actually goes and gives you details. This one here has a lot of fruit examples. So, you'll typically see this in tutorials. Like they'll use fruits as always a common list item, is a list of fruits, and then you append it. But this will kind of give you just a quick overview of what this one method does, and you can just go back and select another one. So this is a pretty cool site to use. So you have that. You have Python Tutor, which is cool. You can write code and then see how it works, and then you can use W3 schools to kind of take a look at the some of the methods you have there. So, any questions on that?
Are those posted in the Slack?
Yeah.
Already.
Understand. Woo!
Oh, thank you. It went right over my head. I totally forgot.
It's fine. That's why we record this. So if you have something going on, attendance is not mandatory in this class. So if it's too much, and you don't attend and use the link that we give, that's fine. You may get an email from Greg, but just to see how you're doing. If you're still going through QuickPass, you can say, "Yep, I'm still I just can't attend during the time, but I'm still going through recordings and I'm asking questions." You can do that. So we still work asynchronously here. So if you're up in the middle of the night. Let's say, we have some folks still in the military in this class. They'll attend, and if they're on mid shift and that's when they have the time, they can ask their question and wait till the morning to get answers. That's how it works. I'm usually up pretty late, and so I'll answer a message on Slack, all the time. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I'm up pretty late. I was going over. I thought we didn't meet until next week, so I'm just like I'm I'm going through this, and I'm required to get my CISSP certification, so I'm like going through that as well. So I'm like, oh, the schedule got confused. So my bad.
I understand. I understand. Awesome. But let's keep going, because I think we have just a few more and list methods to go through, and we'll move into tuples. But here we have the index method. So that searches the list for a given value and returns the index position of the first sentence of the value. And if it's not in the list, it will throw an error. So you have to kind of know that it's in there, because if you try and use this in a big block of code, if it throws an error, your code stops. And that's not usually what you want to do. So you want to maybe have like a check to see if it exists first before getting your index. In this case, we're going back to our travel bucket list, and we're saying .index, and we want to find Texas, right? So I run that. Well, Texas is definitely in my travel bucket list, because I want to go to Texas, and it's at index 5. Now, if I were to like make that lowercase, there's the error. Why was the error? Because lowercase Texas is not the same thing as uppercase Texas. So you also have to write, you have to have the exact same item name. If it's wrong, then you'll get the error. You asked, why didn't the remove the first A in the list, Canada? That's a good question. So remember, I had Japan, and it was like at the end of the list, it was like JAPA like this, right? So, oh, right here it is. My scrolling's all messed up. Where'd it go? It's down here. Oh my gosh, there it is. Found it. So remember, we extended Japan with on here, right? Well, it did not remove this A because, well, this item is not A. The entire item is Canada. So that is one item. It's not going to drill into the actual letters of the item. It's going to treat this as one single item. Just like this is one single item. That is an A because it's one letter and it's one complete item in this whole entire list. That's why it did not remove the first A in Canada. Does that make sense? Awesome. That's a good question. You can get to that first A in Canada if you use that the indexing. You could do that. But you couldn't remove it from a string. So once you drill down to that item and you're trying to remove a letter from a string, Python's gonna be like, nope, you can't change a string. So a string is immutable, so you can't change that. So your data types will still behave. You can use string methods on an item inside of a list if it's a string. So I can drill down to Canada at index 0 and then do a string method on that string, and it will work for that. So you can do that. But you can't change a string in place. You can't add letters or anything. You'd have to totally redefine that entire string. So you'd have to replace Canada with a whole complete new string if you wanted to change it. Just like we did, we took Fiji and turned it into Texas. Conversely, we have the count method, and that counts the number of times X appears in the list. In this case, X being whatever we put in there. So if I want to count how many times Texas is in the list, well, it's one time, right? It's a travel bucket list. I want to go to those places once. There's nothing wrong with putting Texas twice, though. You could have 2 Texases in your list if you wanted to. But in this case, we have just one Texas, and we get back one time in the list. Any questions on index or count? Again, these resources, right here, these are really invaluable. I can't, I can't, encourage you to use these enough. Googling Python string methods, Python list methods, Python tuple methods, Python tuple behavior. Like, you can Google all sorts of terms and get sites like this that will help you. That's the beauty of intro level stuff. You have the resources available. And then, of course, there is nothing wrong with going to a Slack channel and saying, I'm trying to do, I'm trying to use this. I'm trying to change this list around, and here's what I'm trying to do. I just can't get it. Ask the question like that. I'm trying to move Japan to the beginning of the list, but I don't know how to do that. That's a perfectly valid question for Slack. And, a fellow student's going to help answer, or if I see it, I'll help answer. The TA, Rich, will answer. Ask the questions. I encourage all sorts of discussion in that Slack channel because that's what it's used for. And you can take ownership of a question. If you know the answer, spit your answer out there. And then what if your answer is wrong? That's okay, because we can all learn together. So you'll see me make mistakes in this course eventually. I'm going to say, yeah, here's how you do something. And I get an error. I'm like, oh, wait, that's not how you do something. I don't remember everything with coding. I have to look up stuff all the time and Google it. So no shame in Googling and revisiting something that you should know or you think you should know. It's just too much stuff. There's too much to learn. You need to have a way to look it up. So please, please, please Google it. Please ask questions. It's, that's why we're here. So, all right, let's move on to sort. So the sort method will sort a list and it will sort in ascending order by default. Now, it will organize all your stuff into an order. So if you have numbers and letters and other lists, there is a certain way it sorts things. And with like letters, it typically uses the values letter, so ASCII tables. That's typically how it's going to organize items in a list. But if I took a travel bucket list and I just wanted to sort it, right? If we took a look at the list now, you see we have like Canada, the New Zealand, Antarctica, Italy, Chile. It's definitely not in alphabetical order because I have, other A's down here. So if I ran this and then looked at my travel bucket list again, this actually changes, it mutates your original list. So what I had before was up here. It no longer exists this way. The sort method actually takes every item and then reorders their memory location in the computer. So your list now is this. So you can't get back the way it was before unless you redefine it. So that's something you have to keep in mind if you're going to be sorting a list. It just changes it in place and it changes the order and puts it in order, in this case, alphabetically. And then once you run that, there's no going back to the way it was. So if you had a certain order in your list because of where you want to travel first, now you're going to have to figure out how to get it back into order. Conversely, you can add a flag in there, which is reverse. So there's a reverse equals true flag. Reverse. And if you know what's cool about IDEs too, and this is nice, is when you put in like parameters or options for a method, you can start typing it and this little thing will pop up and it will have this reverse equal. You can click that and it will put that in for you. So it kind of lets you know what available stuff you have. And then I can put true. And if I ran this now, well, now it changes it again and puts it in reverse order. And so now it's in the reverse order. Another cool thing to do with lists and list methods, you can, in an IDE, you can put a dot, and then it will give you like a whole bunch of methods that you can use on a list. So you can then just click whatever you want to put in with the Jupyter Notebook. So that's another way to kind of see what methods are available to you. So because you're not going to remember them all, so you may go here and be like, okay, oh, I think it's extend. Is it extend or append? I can't remember. And sometimes even on some IDEs, you can click it, and then yeah, it'll give you like a little information. This is kind of cryptic to me anyway, it is. But this shows that the extend method is a method. It's been defined here. It kind of gives you what the code is behind the scenes, if you will, in Python. And it says, okay, it's an iterable. So I need to have an iterable like a string or something to use in this method. So this help is kind of cryptic to me. It's not really useful. Again, if you can't remember on something like, oh, is it extend or append, you can go to one of the sites that I have listed in the pre-course to go over that. So that's little tips with using IDEs that kind of help you. And of course, if you have, if you're high speed, which I hope you're not like yet, but if you have like AI help like doing stuff, I think at this stage you're kind of cheating yourself because you're kind of relying on some things to hold your hand. I would try not to use AI assistance with this stuff because really you need to kind of understand how these basic data types work and these collections work. And then once you're comfortable with that, using AI, they have a whole AI lesson inside Platoon now. It's pretty awesome. They just built it. So it's really cool. Yes, you're right. Muscle memory and repetition. Just going through coding. That's the biggest thing. So hopefully you'll get some out of these exercises we have at the bottom, or Code Wars. That's another good one. Code Wars is a good site to use. It has like challenges, and you just like you have your coding challenges for part 2. It's the same thing, and there's different levels that you can accomplish. So
the way you're breaking it down now, because this is like my third or fourth time, not going through this, but going through Python course. I think I went through Reuven something's course. So now that you're explaining it, everything is finally kind of clicking. Because I was trying to do it through JavaScript, but this is way better.
Awesome. Well, that's good. Yeah, and sometimes just going through courses several times too, watching YouTube videos. Another good YouTube channel also is Corey Schaefer. You can look him up. He actually stopped making videos for a while. He just started again, but he has like stuff on all sorts of Python subjects, making your environments, kind of setting up your computer. I think he even shares like a whole like script that will completely change your computer to be a set like his. But there's quite a bit of changes, so you want to be careful with it. But it's actually pretty cool.
You said Schaefer? Corey Schaefer?
Corey Schaefer, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right, so we had sort, right? So I talked about that for a while. The sorted method returns a copy of the sorted list so you can assign to a new variable, but leaves your original list intact. So that's a way where, if you wanted to keep your original list order, but you also wanted to sort it, and just see what it looks like, you can do that with sorted. So in this case right now, my list is backwards, right? So if I ran it again, see it's still in that same sorted and reverse order. So let's go ahead and take off this flag because I don't want that. And let me see if I can run that now. Okay, so I say my other sorted travel bucket list, right, is sorted the right way, and then I print my original travel bucket list, which remember is sorted backward reverse order, and then my other sorted travel bucket list is in the forward order. So that's how you can use sorted to return a copy. You can assign it to a variable and then use it later on down the road. So I think I had left some code in there from before, but you can go ahead, on your own, try and create your own list of places you want to travel to, and tinker around with the list methods. Or you can make a list of fruits if you want to, like we usually see with these other tutorials. You can tinker with any kind of list really if you want. So that's lists. That's all the methods in lists. I think I covered them all. I may have some other. Let me see. Oh, went too far. Did I? Yeah. Yep, reverse. Yep, sort. We have copy. That's another one. That's actually something you want to think about. It's not really, I mean, you may run into problems. Let me go ahead and actually make a new code block down here. Just do it here, I guess. Let me see if I can remember how to do this. I always mess up the first time I do this. So in this case, let's say, oh, here we go. So my new list equals travel bucket list. And then if I were to print my new list, and then I'm not going to run that code yet, but I'm going to make a new code block. I'm going to say travel bucket list dot append. What's a cool location to go to? Anyone?
Fiji.
Tokyo.
Tokyo, Fiji. Well, Tokyo, Fiji was, well, let's put Fiji back in because yeah, put Fiji back in, right? We took it out. Okay. And then we can print. Let's do this is the lists with Fiji added. And here, I'll show you why I'm doing this. And then travel bucket list. And then I can say print. So here's what I'm doing. So I'm making a new list, right? So I have my travel bucket list. It already exists. I think it exists in this form. So it's gonna look funny, but that's fine. And I want to print my original. So print. This is my original bucket list. Travel bucket list. Okay. And then this is my new list. I'll make it nice and big. There we go. This is my new list. Okay. And so what I'm doing is I'm making a new list and I'm making it equal to my travel bucket list. And so if I ran that, okay, so this is my original bucket list. Cool. And this is my new list. So I have new list and bucket list. And then if I append Fiji to it, this is the original list. List with Fiji added, and then this one should be my new list. So this is my new list that I have not touched. I haven't added anything to it, right? My new list. Why don't we do that? Type too fast. So here's what I did. I took travel bucket list and I appended Fiji to it. And so what should happen? Then I should have the travel bucket list now has Fiji at the end. And then, in fact, I'm going to make it separate so I can kind of really see the difference. So Command X, Command P. Okay, so if I run this, now I've added Fiji at the end, right? Now I should run this. I have Fiji at the end. So I never appended Fiji to my new list at all. But somehow it made it to my new list. And that concept of when I talk about shallow copy, what you're doing here is you're not actually making a new list here. What you're doing is you're creating a reference to the memory location of whatever you're assigning it to. So it's a shallow copy, if you will. And when you do that, if you change the original memory location, whatever's pointing to that memory location will also change, and you won't know. So that's another one of those kind of things that gotchas that you may have an issue. If you think you're making a new list by doing this operation right here, you're really not. You're just making a shallow copy. And if you change that original one, it's going to change your new one too. So I think that's the first time I've done this where it actually worked first time and I didn't forget a step. So that was really cool. So just keep that in mind. That's there's a whole other, like, you can look up Python deep copy, and then like how you can create a new list from an existing list. You could also loop over a list and move the items into another list if you want to kind of brute force it. There's all sorts of ways you can move data to a completely new list where if you change one, the other will not change. But new developers, new people just new to Python, trying to figure things out, they'll do this, and then they'll see things change. They're like, what is going on with the code right now? I didn't intend that to happen. So so just keep that in mind. That's another kind of one of those things.
So if you screw up once, then so theoretically you should copy the code elsewhere just in case if you screw up.
Yeah. Or use Jupyter Notebooks where it kind of keeps a record. Like when you run it, you can always copy and paste and reassign back to the original. Like that's what I love about like coding in Jupyter Notebooks, especially with teaching with Jupyter Notebooks, is I can have a record of what I've done and I can, go back to revisit things. It breaks things up into steps. So yeah, I mean, and of course, Jupyter Notebooks are awesome for data visualization. So if you're taking like code, on the job, at least I did my last contract, we were taking these weather model files. There's these giant, like, I mean, some were up to like 1 gig, like just a single file, and it's called a grid file, and you have to run through and like use a special library to read it. But then you can use like matplotlib to actually visualize the grid file, and then you can convert it in different file types with Python, mess with the parameters inside. But you can do it all inside of a Jupyter Notebook where you can kind of break down your steps and make sure it runs correctly before you throw it into a big script. And so it was really cool. I really like that part of the job. And it was dealing with machine learning a bit, which was really awesome too. Like going through and actually running training and hearing your computer like actually use GPU and start spinning up, get really hot, and it's running for like 15 hours. And then you actually train a machine learning model to do something that's really neat. So, but I won't get into that much detail. We're going to talk about tuples here in a minute. Let's go ahead and actually, I think we should go ahead and take a break before we go into tuples, because this is not going to be a very long section. We'll be done, and then we can go over other things. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll just come back. Let's come back at 8:05. And we will resume with tuples, and then we'll go over what else y'all want to go over. Let's pause the recording. Okay, welcome back from the break. Before the break, we finished up all the methods that we introduced with Python lists. Again, these are coming at you, really quickly. And that's because we only have so much time to teach it. But that's okay, because we're recording this, and you can always go back and look at the recording. And then, of course, the resources we share with you that we have online, you can find all these methods again to go over those. So let's move on to tuples. That is another data structure in Python that is also ordered, but there's a bit of a difference with them compared to lists. Tuples are ordered collections, but they are immutable. So just like a string is immutable, a tuple is immutable, and they're denoted with parentheses. Really, it's not parentheses, more of a comma, but you'll see tuples instantiated with parentheses, typically with a comma separating it. And like all immutable objects, you can't add, subtract, or edit the items in place. But you can change the data in a tuple by replacing the entire thing. So just like a string, you can redefine a string to a different string with a change. You can redefine a tuple if you need to make a change to a tuple. We have to totally overwrite the entire structure. So that makes tuples good for data that stays static. So like coordinate pairs, for example, that's kind of the most common use case that I've used in my experience. Working for NGA, they're a mapping agency for the United States. Lots of coordinates are used with mapping agencies, and so I use coordinates a lot, geospatial stuff, and dealing with KML files, and coordinates are typically the full-on like decimal coordinate to a very exact location. But in this case, we have in this example, we have coordinates 3, 4. So I can run this here, and so the tuples are ordered collections like lists. So if I put the 3 and the 4, or I put the 4 first and the 3, it'll stay that way. But because they're immutable, some operations like sort will not work with tuples like they will with lists. But some operations will work. So like iteration, so just going over, using a loop on a tuple will work. Checking the length will work. Checking membership. So in this case, I have my coordinates and then my length. I should get a result somewhere. I can print it, and then I can check for membership. So 5 in coordinates, right? Is 5 present? That's what I name it. If they take a look here, the length is 2, and then is 5 present? It's false. 5 is not in my coordinate, right? And so let me go ahead and throw this right here on this side. Let's go to the bottom, that way we have a new. So let's run that real quick, and then a new code block. So now if I were to like try and if you look, remember how I showed everyone where if you hit the dot, like you can then see all the available methods. If you look, there's not that many. Like with lists, there was a whole bunch. So if I try to do append, right, it's not going to work, right? So if I put like a 5 here and try and append it, a tuple object has no attribute append, like it's an attribute error. It just doesn't work. And if I try to like replace a value, so if I say coordinate at index 1 equals 5, so if I try and change the 4 to a 5 and I run that, a tuple object does not support item assignment. Just like with strings, you cannot do that. They're immutable. So to make that, if I wanted this to be 3, 5, I could do this. And then I can run that. And then it's been changed because I totally redefined it, just like a string. If you totally redefine it, you can change it, but you can't change it in place like you could with append, like in a list, or insert, or any other method we have for lists that actually mutate it. You can't do that with a tuple. A couple others that actually work with lists as well. Here's some methods that work with tuples, and it's actually really good to kind of know these for any kind of collection. Is like the min, max, and sum. So if you go through and if you run this here, 1 is the minimum value in this tuple. 678 is the max value, and it's found right here. And then of course the sum. So you can actually get the sum of all the values in a tuple. You can do that too. So let me go ahead and use the sort method here. See, it doesn't even, so I try and like here, I talk about the sort method, the list method sort. does not work with tuples because they reorder elements. You can't mutate a tuple. In fact, you can see that sort doesn't look like it did with a list because it doesn't exist. So if I try to run that, it has no attribute sort, just like you saw, it has no, it didn't have the other attribute that I had in there. So that's really it with tuples. They're not much different from lists as far as like how they display data, but they are different. In fact, you can't change them. So that's really it with tuples. It's not very much. Any questions on tuples?
You said pretty much it's just the same as a list.
It's an ordered, yeah, it's an ordered collection like a list. It's just immutable, and it's used in code to kind of keep things that are more constant, like birthdays, like oh no, you can have anything in a tuple. You don't have to have just numbers. I think all my examples had numbers, didn't it? Yeah, it
Can you
did.
share the last example one more time?
This one?
I know I'm trying to slide through. Where is it?
So like I could have my, my other tuple equals, and I can do
You said this is geared more for just things that stay constant.
yeah, so like you could do this as a tuple. You can still have other data types inside of a tuple, and that's just fine. It's just you can't change it. So I have a string, I have a number, and then I have actually a list inside of my tuple. So you can do that. It can still hold any kind of data type. It's just
Irreversible.
yeah, you can't. They're immutable. You can't change them once. You can't change them in place. So
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense now. Thank you.
Yep. So that's really in the lesson. That's the ordered data structures. So you learned all the capabilities, limitations of lists and tuples, and you'll find that most of the time you'll be going to a list because you can mutate them, and a lot of times we use lists as like it's like a bucket, if you will, for data. And you'll see when we get to loops why that's important. Sometimes like you'll need to add things to a list while a loop is running. And so you'll instantiate an empty list as like something to hold data while your loop is running. You'll throw the the values that you're looping over if they meet a certain condition into that list, and then you'll use that list once you're done. For example, that's a common example of using lists with loops, and we'll go over that in lesson 5. But there are some assignments here. So does anybody have any questions on the assignments from yesterday? Or do you want to maybe try one of the assignments here and just see what it looks like? We can, I guess, look at them and see if we want to do one together. So I'm happy to do that. Okay, this one's called.
Yeah, can you do another example for tuples really quick? Is that what you were asking?
No, I was not asking if y'all wanted to go into like exercises, but if you want to.
Oh yeah. Exercise, I'm down for it.
Okay,
yeah,
either one.
Please post it.
What's that?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's please look at them and work through them together.
Okay, cool. All right, so this one here is you'll be given a list consisting of unique elements except for one thing that appears twice. Your task is to output a list of everything in between both occurrences of this element in the list. Okay, so that one's a good one. Let's see what the other ones are. I only look at these once every few months whenever QuickPass starts, so I forget what they are. Okay, I remember this one. So Lucy loves to travel. Luckily, she's a renowned computer scientist and gets to travel to international conferences using her department's budget. I also like to travel every now and then for work. So Okay, so I think this one here is like she may have a list of cities she's visited, and then upcoming conferences have cities offered. Then you want to grab the one that you want to grab the first one that's not in her existing list of cities. Okay. And if nothing's in there, or if she's already been to all of them before, then there's no worthwhile conferences. Okay. That one has a very long explanation. Let's take a look at the last one. Museum. I think this was a long explanation too. So the Museum of Incredibly Dull Things. Incredibly dull things. They want to get rid of some exhibitions. The interior architect comes with a plan to remove the most boring exhibitions. He gives them a rating, and then she removes one with the lowest rating. However, as she finished rating all the exhibitions, she's off to an important fair. So she asks you to write a program that tells her the ratings of the items after one removed the lowest one. Fair enough. Okay. Okay, so given an array of integers, remove the smallest value, but do not mutate the original array or list. So if there are multiple elements of the same value, remove the one with a lower index. So you'll always so if you evaluate it and the lowest value is 1, but it occurs twice, you want to remove the first one and leave the second one. Or if it was 2, okay. Don't change the orders of the elements that are left. Okay. All right, so we have 3 here. I say we tackle doubles. That's the one I would want to go for. Y'all good with doing this one? Sounds good. We'll do it. Okay, so let's do it this way. Let's just throw it into a Jupyter Notebook file. Code. Oh, I just lost my window, darn it. There it is. Try again. There we go. Let's copy. Let's copy that. I don't think I have a test or anything. This is the entire script. So I can just throw it in here. Okay, cool. Okay, so given a list, so in this case here, looks like there's 4 test cases. We have this print statement, this print statement, this print statement, and this print statement. It's saying, okay, so it's saying, so do y'all see what this is doing right here? What this print statement, let's evaluate that first, because this kind of goes in a bit of review from yesterday.
Is that printing anything that occurs twice?
So, well, what exactly is this print statement doing? Like, can you break down what's happening with this print statement and what the entire thing is doing? Because there's a lot happening in this one line of code. I want to make sure, like, when you read code, you're going to have to kind of see that. And there's a few like minor details that you can see if you understand what you're looking at. So, and let's just break it down, like starting from the left. Okay. Well, no, we're printing something, right? We know that. So we know we're printing something. We're enclosing it into our, like, we have our parameters inside the print statement. And what is our parameter? Well, our parameter is this. Well, what is that? What is that parameter?
Is it comparing the 2 lists to pull out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from each?
Nope, it is not doing that.
Because it's equal to in each of the lists, right? In the middle.
So what this is doing is this is comparing 2 things. It's comparing this and it's comparing this, right? And your goal is to get true, because this is a comparison operator, right? This equals. And so what this is doing is it's saying, hey, I want to run the doubles function on this parameter. And whatever comes out of doubles function, I want it to equal this. And then if that does equal that, then we know it's true. And that means our doubles function is doing what we want it to do. So like I remember I mentioned about how when you call a function, you don't care what's happening inside the function. You just want to get the right result. Well, right now, the function's not giving us the right result because all it's doing is passing. So it's giving us none. So none does not equal this list of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We want to make doubles. When we give it this, we want it to spit out this. And so we have to write logic inside this function to do that. And so that's our task, is to write stuff in this function. And that's the whole point of this puzzle. And we want to write stuff in this function to handle every single case that's thrown at it without changing the code every time we run it. We want to run this once we want to call it 4 times with the same code and to work for all 4 cases.
So when you see
go ahead.
When you see those two, are you visually looking at it and then inferring from that line 10 that you're trying to look for anything that doesn't match 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in both lists? Or are you trying to extract the numbers that aren't 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the left list so that it does equal true, or like that they match each other?
So
or
that
none of the above?
Our task is to output a list of everything in between both occurrences of the one thing that appears twice. So that's the puzzle. You're given a list consisting of unique elements except for one thing that appears twice. Your task is to output the list of everything in between those occurrences of that one element in the list. So what we need to do in this case, so in this example, it's saying, okay, here's the list we're given. We want to write logic that will evaluate this, find that one repeats twice, and then basically takes off the 7, 8 and takes off the 0, 1 and leaves 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I see now. There's a 1 hidden in the middle there.
Yeah, so you want to return everything in between the one thing that appears twice. And looking at this example, we want. It looks like we want to return. Oh, this is different. So this one keeps it, but the other one does not keep it. Ooh. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, never mind. I was wrong. Okay, so it looks like it has hello and then lowercase hello. Okay, no, it has none and none. So none and none, repeat, and then this is what you get back. Okay, I see. So none and none, and then this is what you get back. So we have to write Python that does this, not with our eyes. We don't want to do this with our eyes. We want Python to do it for us. So how are we going to do that? So what methods could we use to kind of figure this out? And I'll move this back over and maybe go up to our list of methods. Maybe something will jog our memory. So here's a good list of. Split
List
it.
count?
I don't know if we could split it. I don't think we will need to split the list. I mean, there's no split method that's for strings.
It's not going to be count, right? Because you don't
What's
want to
that?
return the number. Is it list.count? You don't want to remove or return the number of times. You want to.
And this is basic.
I'm sitting here thinking that. I'm scratching my head and I got a headache all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Right. This is supposed to be basic for us. I mean, and I mean.
So I'm telling you right now, like, here's the thing. You're gonna find, and this is just a kind of insider information, right? With coding boot camps, and it's not just Platoon, it's all of them. A lot what they love to do is introduce stuff they haven't even taught yet. Now with this one, you probably could figure it out without, but I would use a loop to figure out, I would always use a loop to kind of figure things out, to brute force it right away. But we can try and figure it out without the loop. But we need to evaluate this and find which one occurs twice, right? So I know we can use the count method because that returns number time a specific value appears in the list, right? But we have to iterate over this to kind of get that, right? So we would need to evaluate, okay, do a count on 0. Okay, no, count on 1. Okay, yes. But this, if we wrote logic like count 0, count 1, it wouldn't work for the next example because we don't have any numbers. We have to use strings. And so you can't really do that either. So that's why I would use a loop. Let's see. Oh, maybe we could, maybe we can use sorted. That way we can keep the original list. And let's see, we would still need to see if something occurs twice. So we'd have to, oh, if statements. Oh, very good. So maybe we can say, so maybe we can use an if statement. Or we can, gosh, we could also cast it to a set to find the one, but we haven't learned about sets yet, so I don't want to use that either. I mean, we can. Sets are unordered data structures that take only unique values. So let's see if count. So we can sort it, we can use sorted, and we don't want to clear it because that just removes all the items in the list. That one's kind of a useless in our case. Yeah, so let's see what we can do. So we can take this list and we need to find something that occurs twice, but it may not be the first item. That's the problem. It may not be the first item. That's why I always want to go into a loop. So
are we stating the obvious? I mean, or
what's that?
So what is it? Are we trying to put it in order? What are we trying to do?
Well, if we put it in order, it still wouldn't end up being the first. Like in this, the first example, right? If we sorted it, number one, we're going to lose what's in between our repeating value, but we can keep the original so we don't lose that, but it's still not going to be the first one. So we're going to look at 0 and what are we going to do? Do a count operation on that and find that it's 1. We would probably still need to iterate. So I would say we probably still want to use a loop. And I mean, have any of you not seen a loop before, like in Python or in JavaScript? Is everyone familiar at least with the concept of a loop? I mean, if not, we're going to learn it on Wednesday next week. Okay. But that's okay. We can still go over it now. We'll just reintroduce it on Wednesday. But a loop, what it does is you take an iterable like a list and you just evaluate it one by one. And the way it looks is you take a for, the word for. So you take for item in, and then list is our variable because list is this right here. When we call the function, list is that. And so we're taking an item like that, and then we can print the item. So we can print item. And so item gets redefined every time. So let's go ahead and let's do this. And then we'll comment this out so it doesn't run. We don't lose it. And then what I'm going to do is let's not do that. Ramsey. There we go. Let's do a comment. There we go. And let's do this. Like that. Okay. So now what we're doing, we're just calling the function itself on this list item. And if I run this, what it's going to do is it's going to run, define item as 0, and then print it. And then define item as 1 and print it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. So it goes through each item and prints it. That's what this loop is doing, right? We're going to learn this again on Wednesday. But now that makes it easy for us to just say, well, instead of print item, we can say we can say list dot count item. And we can say, actually, if list count item equals 2, because if we have more than one, we know it's it, then we know we can keep track of that index. And so we'd actually have to use a enumerate, which is another kind of loop. That's okay. I know this is probably not a good example, and you're like, what is going on right now? But this is like the fastest way to brute force it, if you will. And we can then keep track of the index. So now we know what I is. I is going to be the index. So it's going to go start at 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 9. Or yeah, I think 9 is how many are in there. And we can keep track of the index and then know that we're going to search for that. So we can do it that way. I really want to do this out loop though. I really do.
How can we do it with the rocks and the twigs that we have to work with?
That's why I want to do that instead.
You can't use remove or pop, right? Because you don't know what it is yet.
Right, we don't know what it is. So, I mean, you can't use remove 0 because you'd have to go back. So once you remove it, what do you do then at that point?
What about list variable dot count?
So we can do that, right? But that's what I was doing with a loop, right? Because you need to check each one. So you check this one, right? I mean, we could do that. List, we could say
if statement.
We can say, well, list 0, right? Yeah, without a loop, I just don't see this happening.
Well, yeah, you can't use list variable count either, because counts the number of times X appears in a list, but you don't know where it appears in the list.
You don't know what's in the list, right? When you call this, list can be any list of anything. And you're looking for a copy of that. So if you see how we have a different variety of things. So yeah, that's really tough.
Can we do like a list remove the top?
Somebody say something, I couldn't hear you.
No, I was saying, can we use like list pop? Just removes the item at the index in the list and then returns that item.
So let's see. We can get, maybe we can get the length of the list, and we know, so we know how many times. Yeah, we could use a set. And that's another thing, Juan, like using a set would be awesome, but that's also something we are introduced to next lesson. So like if I were to cast this, like if I were to cast list to a set, set list like that, and then, or define it. So my set equals that. And then if I printed it, it'll be a collection of just the unique values, and then whatever's missing, you'll know then, okay, which one's missing at that point. You can then compare it and find the value.
Is there a way to list a variable where you can show? No, that's not going to work either.
Yeah, since we don't know what it's going to be, yeah, using a loop is really, it tells me I'm thinking I'm going to
How do you get it to count the number of instances like to compare within the list. So it counts the number of times and then shows the index or the location of where each of those duplicate occurrences are.
So so if you're using like index here, for example, is that what you're talking about? So,
Yeah, but to find a way to make it show you, like, basically analyze the list 0 through 8, but look for duplicates, like where a number duplicates.
right, and that's using a loop, going over each item, every time and like seeing, which one has appeared, for example, I would do something like this, right? So let's say, let's call it evaluated list equals empty list. And then I would use a for loop to go over my input list. And I would say, if item is if it's not in evaluated list, add it and move on, right? And then go to the next one. If this item is not in the list, then put it in there and move on. And it would go through and say, okay, it's not in there, it's not in there, it's not in there, it's not in there, it's not in there. And then it's going to get back to this one and be like, whoa, one's already in there. And then I can say, if it's not in there, do this. If it is in there, then we can keep track of that index. So we can also say, we could say last index equals none, right? And then we could loop through it and find the last index, redefine last index to being whatever that index is, and then go look at our evaluated list and find where it was before, and then know that anything between those two indexes needs to be saved. You see what I'm saying?
Nope.
Okay.
I heard
What
the
makes
word.
that one what makes that one different from the list remove and list pop?
Oh, you're talking about if we find it eventually, then we can say list.
Yeah, that's what I was saying like earlier, but I wasn't sure if like you could hear me. I was saying if we could use list remove or list pop for, because it says it removes the item at the index, but then it returns it back.
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
why I was
so
like, when after he said set, I was like, well, what about the remove or pop? But I wasn't sure if is that an option or no.
yeah, you would have to use these in conjunction with a loop though to still get that index. We need the index of the first one and the last one. And the way I would do it, and in fact, I just want to do it this way just to show like how it works. I think this will help. I think you'll be able to follow along with this. So we are going to item, and this time we don't have to actually, we do need to, let's see, item, for item. So I'm going to use that, and then I can count. So 1, then -1. So let me do this and enumerate.
After you do that, can you explain the last index? It cut out on me again. The
Yep.
last index in the evaluated list.
Yep, I can do that. So so if item not in evaluated list, then I will do evaluated list dot append item, else last index equals I, and then I can just take a slice of it. So answer. So let me do that real quick. Answer.
What is a variable for item?
Item is going to be whatever is being evaluated. I'll show you what I mean in a minute.
Okay. I was trying to read through. I'm like, well, what is item being declared? Yeah.
So for I, so last item, last index is I, and then at that point I can break. I really hate that it does this. Okay, so break. And I will know my last index. Do I know my first index? Repeated. So if item is in there, that, and then also repeated item equals item. Because then it'll be there. And then I can, gosh, why is it doing that? Then I can say answer equals oh no, I need to find it first, right? So I need to use my list method to find. Yep, a dictionary is also unordered data structure. So we need to find the index of our item the first time it happens. So I can say first index equals list dot find item. And then I can say answer. I don't need to actually just return list. I'll get rid of this one. I don't need that. Return list at first index and then last index up to but not including. I don't think I need repeated item after all. Last index high. So I need last index. First index, and you'll find the first one. Nope, I can't use that. I can do repeated item there. Repeated item. Okay. I think that'll work. All right, and so what I'm going to do is I am going to move this into Python Tutor. I think that will help. Python Tutor. Edit code. I move this. I probably have a mistake in this. I always get mistakes the first time I run code. So all right. Go here. Okay. Move that. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm just calling the method on this list. So when this, again, remember we define a function here. So this is my function, and I'm going to return a slice of my original list from what I did to get those indexes of the item. So I hope I did this right. We'll see. So we have our last index of, I'm just defining as none now. Remember the none type? This is you can use that to just define a placeholder item now. And then what I'm doing is I'm making a blank list as sort of like a collection bin of values. And then what I'm doing is I'm looping over, and you'll learn about what enumerate means. But what I'm doing is I'm keeping track of an index and an item in a list so I can reference it later. And so that's what this is doing. And then for the first time this loop runs, I'm seeing if the item is not in my evaluated list. Well, the first time this loop runs, it's going to be looking at 0, and evaluated list will be empty. So it's going to say if the item's not in there, which it will not be, it's going to append it and then go back up and start going over the next item. And then this is what the loop does. It goes back and just iterates over a list or any other kind of object that you have. And then if I do find it in there, then I want to keep track of the index of the second time it occurs. So I'm keeping track of this index here, which is what I will be. So I'm defining last index as I. I know that my repeated item is also the item that I'm on. So I want to save that as well. And then I actually want to break my loop at this point, so it does not continue, because I don't want to change my I or item. So I'll stop the loop at that point because I'm done. I have what I need. And then my first index, so I know what my last index is, and I know what the repeated item is. So I want to use find to get the first time it occurs in my list, because it may not be the first time. So I'm using find, which is a list method to find my repeated item that I had just saved in my loop. And then I know, then I have two indexes. I have my first index and I have my my last index. And since I don't want to include my last index, this should be good. I don't have to do a +1 because I don't want to include it anyway. I want to include everything in between. So I'm thinking this will work, but let's go ahead and visualize and see what happens. Yep, already messed it up. So it looks like it's not, yep, it's not find, it is index. That's why. All right, there. Let's try that. There we go. Okay. So now you can visualize what's happening. And so remember, when Python runs, it sees a function right off the first line. It says, okay, cool, there's a function. I'm not going to evaluate till it's called. And so it's going to go down to line 15 and say, oh, cool, the function's called with the parameter. Let's go ahead and go into the function. And so it takes a parameter of 0 through 8, but with a repeating number. And so now inside the function scope, we have the parameter that was put into the function. So we have the function with the parameter, and we want to start going through. Okay. So now we're defining some things that we're going to use later. These are some variables that I'm just going to assign for later. So Python's going to go, okay, well, last index equals none, repeated item equals none, and evaluated list equals empty list. And what's cool about here, you can see how it says, okay, these are the indexes right here in the list, and then these are the values. Enumerate, what it does, it gives me the index, which is I, and then the item is the actual thing that's at that index. So enumerate kind of gives me both. And then I'm going through, I'm going to start in my loop. And if you take a look here, I have I, which is equal to 0, and item also equals 0. You see that right there. And I'm going to say, is the item not an evaluated list? Yes. Okay, cool. Append it. So now evaluated list gets that first value put into there. And then the loop's going to go over again. I is going to become 1. And also the item is 1 because it also ascends up. So the loop's just going to keep repeating. And it's going to check to see if the item I'm on is already in that evaluated list. Is it not? Okay, add it. And it's going to keep doing that. It just keeps going back and forth while I'm going through and iterating over this entire list with this for loop. And then you're going to get to a point right here where it evaluated it. The item is 1. It's already in this list. It found it, and it went into the else statement now. And what I'm doing is I'm going to keep my last index. Now I've just changed my last index to 7. And then I want to make my repeated item is 1. And I'm going to break the loop. And then I want to define first index as the index of the repeated item, which is 1. So I find the first index is also at index 1. And then I want to return a list. So it looks like I need to go first index plus 1. I want to start here. So I have a wrong value. This wouldn't pass the test. But see how I returned a smaller list than what I started with? That's the power of looping. You can evaluate lists and do things. So I need to change this code, and I need to say first index plus 1, which will then give me the next index up. So I can just go to the end. Previous one. There we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I didn't include that. Did that? It looks like a lot of code, but do you like how it's broken down in Python Tutor and how it's explained?
Yes, I have an aneurysm now, but yes.
Yeah.
So
So could we still use the loop, but then try one of the methods that we've went over, or it won't work?
I mean, you could. I mean, you could pop. The thing is, though, remember, you're not just removing that. You're removing everything like outside of it. Like you're not just popping one thing, right? So like using pop or remove really wouldn't work. You want to end up taking a slice, if you will. Now this is a very, very complicated way to solve that problem, right?
Yeah.
I could also like loop through it and find the count of each item. Once I find 2, I know what my item is, and then I can then loop over it to move items to find the other. And like, there's all sorts of ways you can do it. I mean, if this problem is in Code Wars, I'm sure, and you can look at hundreds of different solutions.
Very, very basic for us, so.
Someone has a hot mic. There we go.
Well, on that note, my brain has had as much as it can handle for one day. So I'm out.
I would focus on, again, this is just a problem. This is kind of a preview of what we're going to be doing. Again, this is problem solving, just using your tools. I know it's going to be hard to to see how you're going to be able to do this in like a week or two, but I promise once you just get exposure to it and you repeat it over and over again, and I have some good examples. And then again, these mini projects are awesome. They're going to have us do a lot of this stuff and writing functions, evaluating data. When we get to like unordered data structures, I love working with dictionaries, and because they're a very powerful data structure, and you can find stuff quickly, and it's really neat. So I promise it's not going to be unbearable. And now you have an entire weekend to study this stuff and use Python Tutor to try code out, to see how it's working, see how it's manipulating lists, and see how it's changing things when you do something. And so, yeah, I really think you're going to enjoy it. Once we get through the rest of these lessons and we get to mini projects, you're going to start, seeing the light, and you'll be able to pass this coding challenge, no problem. I promise.
For the problem that you did, like what was the mindset of like getting, I guess the thought process of like how getting to like the last index, repeated item, or using that variable? Is that like a the word I'm looking for, defined, or I can't think of the term for it.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can. You started getting quieter and quieter. So
I forgot the term for like the defined words that's already kind of like JavaScript. I can't think of the term for it, but I was saying like, how did you get the variable like last index or the function last index? Is that a function?
No, so this is a variable. So basically in my function, right? When this function runs, I'm defining just an empty variable. It's none right now. Like in the very beginning, it's none. And when I get into the loop, that's when I start changing these values to what I need. And so if you look, right now, all I'm doing is I'm appending. And the reason I'm appending an item to the list, because I want to keep the same order as I'm looping. So I want to start with empty list and append the first item in, and then append the second one. So I'm keeping them in the same order as I'm evaluating these things, right? So all I'm doing with this loop is I'm seeing if this already exists in evaluated list. Well, evaluated list starts off as empty. And you saw that right here. If you see how if you watch right here as I scroll through and the loop's happening, it's filling up. And it looks just like the list before, right? But what it's doing, it's trying to see what item already exists. And when it hits this one right here, item 1, it already exists. And so then it moves into this else statement, and that's when I start redefining these things. If you take a look, last index, right? Last index now equals index 7. That's the index I'm on in my loop. And I'm saving this value as last index, because I want to keep that, because I know that's my last occurrence of whatever item was repeated. I don't know what item that is. And this code should work for the next example.
Okay, so the part that got me confused, I think, was the enumerate and for I. Because I was trying to figure out, like, well, where is the I that's being declared? I guess that's what kind of threw me off.
So yes, enumerate, what that does in this loop is every time it runs, it sets I as an incrementing value. So when the first time it runs, I is 0. The second time it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see that if you watch it count up whenever I'm looping, see I is 0. And then it loops again, I is 1, 2, 3, 4.
So does the loop automatically put it in chronological order?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Loops iterate. So loops always start at the beginning and go until you break it or it gets to the end of the list.
Okay, so the only part that kind of tripped me up was the for I, and so because I was like, well, what is being declared? So it makes sense.
These are a way to declare variables that happen inside the loop as it's running. And so again, I'll introduce this in lesson 5, and it's it's cool if you don't understand it now. But I just wanted to show, like, sometimes you're going to get lessons, and you're going to get this in Code Platoon too. You're going to get homework or assignments, if you will, that you never went over in class. And in fact, you're going to be going over that later, but they want you to start Googling things on your own, because, as you become a developer, you're going to have to learn things on your own anyway. So you may see something that's unfamiliar, like, what is that? Well, let's copy paste it and Google it and see what it is. And so, I mean, you could say, what is the for item in Python? Like Python 4, what is that? And then you could, I bet that's probably what you can get. Let's see. Python.
After this, when we get a chance, Juan needs some help getting his online environment up and running.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I mean, we're at the end of class, so let me go ahead and stop the recording.